public input. What would be your wish list? What have you already tried in this area? So looking at the participant list, can we maybe just go through the list in order? So that's probably Aubrey is first.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I know a couple of you. Good to see the WTF ladies. I don't know if I have anything very, very interesting to contribute to this, but I am an architect with a firm that does public transportation design, so a lot of stations, subway stations, bus terminals, things like that. And I've worked on a couple of projects that have federal funding, so they have to go through the EIS process, which requires, different kinds of public feedback and presentations and making sure that the communities the project could affect are, aware of what's going on. So a lot of that is web-based. One of the more interesting ones I saw was, it was for a light rail extension project, and they actually had like an interactive map on their website, so a little bit more creative, I guess, than a survey where people could log on and put a pinpoint exactly on the map where they had a concern. For example, this light rail project was specifically connecting to campuses and then also running through some other more like suburban shopping district type areas. And then there were a lot of pinpoints saying, well, why aren't you going to the airport? There's reasons for that, but it was very interesting to see feedback in that format. And then I think another big one is just holding public meetings and presentations in the communities themselves and not having them, sort of downtown or at the, wherever the transit agency is headquartered, because the folks who are affected by these projects may not actually have access or time in their busy lives to get down there and actually see what's going to be happening in their front yards, Yeah, so I don't know about wish list. I'll think about that one, but
maybe we can do wish list in a separate round. This thing keeps going away, but the next person is me. So I feel like, web surveys are good, but they're really static. And I really like what Aubrey said about, adding more interactivity. But I'm wondering whether it would actually be also useful to pair it with, some kind of opt-in, automatic data collection. So instead of asking people, how did you travel in the past week, if you could give people an option to just, collect data and tell us how they traveled in the past week without having to go and fill out a 20-minute survey, maybe that would help. Yeah. So the next person on the list is, oh God, I can barely see. Danny, do you have any thoughts?
Hi, I don't have any background in this. I'm just the room moderator to help with the technical side of it, but I'm excited to listen to the discussion.
Lady?
Pretty much like Danny, I'm just finishing my master's in data science and trying to learn about transportation because I really enjoy the transportation industry, but I'm just here learning and because I'm focusing on transportation data guiding for my thesis.
Nadia?
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. I am calling in today from the DC area, and a project that comes to my mind when I think about this topic is one that my company was doing with redesigning Route 1, which runs through Alexandria, where the new Amazon headquarters is going to be, so there's a lot of urban design to go in there. And when soliciting public feedback for that, something that we really kept in mind is people just kind of want everything all the time. So receiving public feedback is also a good opportunity to teach the concept to the public that certain things do need to be prioritized. So what was successful for us is instead of listing several elements separately, bike lanes, parking spaces, green spaces, we put all those different elements up against each other, and we essentially forced people to pick what they would prefer between those. The main idea being kind of teaching the concept of trade-offs, but also then we have a certain like quantitative way to tell what the result actually was. Basically, if we kind of put all of those different kind of showdowns against each other and we assign them different values, then we end up having priorities sort of as a number. A problem that we did run into, and I'm curious how we could collectively solve it, is for virtual outreach like this, there are certain people in communities which are very passionate about what they'd rather see, and we're very happy to hear those people out. But sometimes those people will insist on pretending they are 20 different people and getting into that. So aside from like tracing IP addresses and trying to remove duplicates, it's a challenge. We've also had the same problem kind of with the virtual public meetings that we've held where we do want to answer everyone's question, but what ends up happening is we have a few regular guests that will get in and they will throw in like 40 questions into our like question queue. So then when we work with the urban planners and the bus planners who are really there to answer the question and less on the communication side of things, they have to chug through that list of 40 questions from the one person. So we're still learning how to moderate that sort of thing.
That's really interesting feedback, and maybe after we sort of hear everybody out once, we can go back on another round and have some reflections on what we heard in the first time, because I really enjoyed hearing about this, and I think I need to think about it a little bit before I can respond, but they're really interesting questions. Patty Gibson?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would say that my first reaction to this question is the fact that collecting public input is often a box check that we do on major projects. And, like some of you guys have already said, it becomes like an onerous process where, you get the crazy people who show up in their bathrobe and all they do is want to bitch. And, it's not what we want as consultants and transportation professionals, but we have to check this box off. And unfortunately, the public is a major component of public transportation, so they need to be taken seriously, and public outreach needs to be more of a priority, I think, than it is. Not in terms of building a consensus necessarily, because, some of these decisions are already made before those public meetings start, but just in terms of having everyone be a part of the process, which I think is very, very important. I have participated in a few well, I've gone as a regular Patty citizen to a few, and I've always been excited about the free donuts and soft pretzels, but I've always wondered about the actual effect of, is this really important for the viaduct that's 150 years old, or are you just wasting money? And is it going to impact parking? So, I don't know. I don't really get that much out of it. But personally, I did participate in the 30th Street rehabilitation public outreach sessions, and those were a series of in-person at different times of the day, but predominantly during the evening commute. And it was a lot of storyboarding and, use your pink Post-its and your yellow Post-its and whatever, and then come back to the office and sort them into color and see what you could find out from that. And it's not effective, it's not effective. The interaction, I think, is more what people want, and certainly time limited. That's good too. I just recently, like in the last 3 months, I've participated in 3 sessions with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission on some of their 2025 planning master plan sessions. And those had a different theme. Each session had a different theme. One was, regional transportation, what's happening, how is diversity, inclusion, and equity tied into it, and how is healthcare tied into it. So I kind of went, I don't know, quite frankly, I don't know why I was invited. I guess it was because of WTS. I don't know. But I attended, and I had a nice experience with all the genius planners. And it was cool, because they brought in different stakeholders from the 5-county region. If you're not from Philadelphia, then you know that we have a very strong regional base here, and it's 5 counties that are spread across Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So lots of input from small little towns, including the one where I live. I live on a county road, and there's 4 neighbors, okay? But, like, Philadelphia is 45 minutes away where I grew up, and, I'm a ninja taking the trolley. So there's so many perspectives that are involved in it. It kind of makes it very difficult to garner any kind of public outreach and public consent and ever build a consensus. So I don't know, but I think the input is very important, and I think the idea is to make it more of a priority that before the design decisions are all made, that we include that in the process and actually listen to it. I think that's vital to mass transit being public. And I think when you look at it in terms of funding, which comes from all of our taxpayer dollars, that's where, you make your case of, look, this is legit. This is just not a bunch of people, going on and on and on. This is about how we spend our money and what the best option is. And so you have to look at it from that perspective. And I will rest my case there.
Cool. So maybe, since we have time, we could go around and tease out, do a second round of sort of a deeper discussion on some of the aspects that came up. So, picking the example of how to identify, how to highlight the trade-offs. That seems like it's almost like I've heard this for, community budget planning kind of things before. So instead of, a city coming in with like a budget, it's like you get all these stakeholders together and then you do the budget as a collaborative exercise almost. Have the rest of you seen something like that? Would you use something like that? And do you think it works? Sort of general thoughts on that. Can we go around the room again? I think there's just the 4 of us here, so we have time for multiple rounds. So Aubrey?
Sure. No, muted. Unmuted? Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to respond directly to that super well, but I've been thinking about what Nadia said about educating the public, and I thought that was really interesting because I think those of us who, especially, I don't know what all of your backgrounds are exactly, but, well, none of you said, but we kind of know so much that we may forget that not everyone works in public transportation or uses it on a daily basis or knows all the jargon. So I've seen it a couple of times where, you know, the designers, the engineers, the planners will go into these public presentations and they'll just speak like they're speaking to other planners and engineers. And I think that even though they're, like Patty said, checking the box of the public outreach, they're not really making the information accessible in a way that people truly understand what, you know, what's coming their way. I'm thinking of this light rail project that I mentioned where they're putting 2 tracks down the center of like a 4, 5, 6 lane kind of local highway, and you know, I think people freaked out about that a little bit because they are thinking, well, you know, isn't that going to cause crazy traffic? How am I going to get to where I need to go if I drive? Where there was all this background research and models and sort of like visualizations and data showing that, you know, it wasn't going to affect traffic. If anything, the number of people who would potentially take the light rail would alleviate some of the traffic enough to make it feasible. But none of that was presented in a way that was very clear to the public, I think. So I don't know. And I've seen other neat little tools here. I don't know if any of you participate in Parking Day in Philly or in your own cities, but it's basically a day where individuals or companies or organizations can take over like a city parking spot and make it into a little public park or space. One of my favorites had like little building blocks for like road and bike lane and you know, park and all the things, and people could come and like rearrange their ideal like city like street section, I guess.
City.
Yeah, it was like kind of cute because it was like kids building blocks, but for grown-ups. So I think, I don't know, maybe that's to the extreme at one end, but I think somewhere in between, you know, bike lane Legos and like super dry planner speak, there's like a way to actually explain to the public how transportation projects will affect, I don't know, will affect their daily lives in a way that they understand.
So to follow up on that, I mean, so for I've attended city council meetings, or at least one, in which someone said, I don't trust models. So, you know, to speak to your thing about, you know, the models show that the light rail will actually reduce congestion, I'm wondering whether it would actually be better to do a sort of pilot, or, you know, say I'm going to block off one lane and run a BRT on it for 6 months or something. And I'm not a transportation planner, really, like I'm not a transit person, so I don't know that will work. But, you know, if you could actually show people, then maybe they would be more responsive to it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, my career, like my experience is pretty kind of narrow, but I've seen that, or I've, you know, read articles about that kind of stuff, and it always seems like, you know, generally a great idea. I really think if you can get the town or the city or, you know, whoever the authorities are on board with running a test case or a trial, people really, that's probably the best way to demonstrate what you're looking to do.
Cool. We have a few other people who've joined, so maybe we can hear from them before we go around the loop again. So for those people who recently joined, we're just going around the room and sharing our thoughts on public input in the 21st century. And I have 3 questions to help maybe guide that. So one is, what are your ideas on collecting public input? What would be your wish list for how you could collect public input? You know, what is missing now, what you would like to see, and what have you already tried in this area? So, Cody?
Hi, everyone. I clicked twice and joined you all because this is definitely, I was torn between a couple sessions. So I previously, up until about a month ago, worked for BTA Silicon Valley, and part of what I did, I did digital communications and transformation, and a big part of that was community outreach. And years ago, had been pushing to get virtual meetings happening, and it was quite a struggle. It was really hard to convince people that maybe we should do some meetings online to help more people be able to participate, and possibly even instead of some of the in-person meetings was what I found I had to battle with, because people wanted to, there was the default, and it's been pretty remarkable how things have changed during COVID. All of a sudden, people were looking in the agency like, well, how could we do this? And I was able to raise my hand and say, here's how I have been doing this for several years now. So let's get going. And what I think is now happening, and what I'm most focused on, is it's taken a lot to get ready to go all virtual. And actually, to this group who's organizing this, I put this out there. What I think is on the horizon is how to go hybrid. So the challenge of running, so get ready, and I've done some of these. It's very hard. I don't think I did a great job, but I tried it a couple times. It's both in-person and virtual simultaneously. So that's going to be the expectation. I don't know if that's something y'all are thinking about, but that's going to be the expectation. Just think in your mind about summer. The expectation there, or I live in San Jose. Do you want me to participate? Can I participate? I'm not going to fly out to Philadelphia necessarily for transportation camp, but I'm very interested in the topic, and I'm participating right now. But I really wouldn't. I'll fly to APTA conferences and stuff like that, but no offense, it's just like, if there was one in my area, it's expensive, and I have two young children, right? So anyway, the point is it's coming, and there's a certain level of, the challenges are technological, obviously, is a piece of it, which starts to have some funding challenges. And then really, though, it comes down to the people, right? And the human resources to make that happen, and the training and the experience, the attitude, how many people do you need, right? How comfortable is everyone with technology? And it may be that this is an opportunity to really let people capitalize on their strengths. So you really need someone to, the other big bullet point is people want to go back to in-person as soon as they possibly can. Most people. That's human nature. That's across the board. There are just these practicalities, and there are some people who really don't want to, right? And honestly, I like virtual. I prefer virtual because I can engage with a lot more people a lot more efficiently, and that's my goal. So there are going to be people who gravitate towards the in-person, the IRL in real life, and need to facilitate a great experience for people there. And then there are people who can help do that virtually, and everybody needs to have the same excellent experience, whether they're at a professional conference or they are community members who need to feel like they're being heard, right? So no one should feel left out. Sorry, I go on and on, but the one other thing I've realized is that the best model, I think, and the great opportunity we have in our field to maybe not be the first to learn this is education. So right now there are children who are choosing, their parents have chosen to have them at home, and I have some friends I've talked with about this, and it's not intentional, but the teachers kind of forget about them. It's too easy for the teacher who has that habit, obviously, of hundreds of years of in-person education. That's the norm. And now there's some kids here in front of me again, and I have to figure out COVID safety and all this stuff. Oh, and then there's this laptop sitting over here, and that laptop right over there that's easy to forget is 7 children who need to be educated, who need to have their needs met. And sometimes a friend told me a story, teacher forgets to let them in, and they're texting each other and saying, are you in? They can be completely forgotten, and it's no one's fault. It's just the question is, so in education, in our space, do you actually need 2 people? Do you need 2 teachers or a teacher and a TA? And someone is making sure that those who are virtual are having maybe even a better experience, because there's things you can do virtually that you can't do in person, and vice versa.
Right,
So,
like the chat on the side. So I see people have been putting chats on the side. Please do so. I think that it's really, so normally if we were all in person, we couldn't have side conversations without derailing the main conversation. But one of the great things about being virtual is that you can have side conversations, really on the side. So, feel free to respond to what you're hearing or what you've heard in the chat instead of waiting for your time to speak. And we had somebody else, but we had two other people and they both dropped off. So, okay, we can go around the room and go on to Nadia. So Cody, before you came, we were just talking about maybe, I think there were maybe three things that sort of came up. One was to get a better sense of how to convey to people both sort of trade-offs and the full impact of a potential change. So trade-offs, like, well, you can't have everything. So, you can't have a bike lane and a light rail line and, your existing freeway all in the same place without spending too much money. And so, you have to do some trade-offs there. And then we were talking a little bit about maybe doing some sort of pilots as a way of public input, because people may not trust models very much. And then we were talking about, whether public input is just around checking a box, or how it is actually, tied to how to make it more real, I think, in a sense. And then I brought up maybe using technology to move things from being a static sort of web form to something where we could collect maybe more ongoing data on an opt-in basis, which would actually help with the sort of try it out kind of approach. So Nadia, we could go ahead and maybe get some feedback from you, and then we can come back to Cody and see if he has any thoughts on that.
Sure. So where I'm kind of thinking about all this now is finding the right balance, and this comes with like the appropriate technical solution for having like both convenience for people to connect with something virtually without needing to download anything, without needing to figure out anything, having it be very accessible. The balance between that and having whatever they do be interactive, have people ask questions, potentially have maybe voting or polling happen during meetings. And I bring all these things up because in my experience using, let's see, Zoom, Facebook Live, GoToWebinar, those have been the main ones.
Teams. Don't forget Teams.
Yeah. Well, in my experience hosting kind of public-facing things, I have yet to find anything that strikes that balance. To respond to you, Cody, what you're saying about like a hybrid model terrifies me, but also you're correct. Like something that I haven't tried, but my best idea on how to kind of host something where you can kind of get it all would probably be to do a Facebook Live event, but use like Open Broadcaster or something third party to force like something else in there that has interactivity, if that makes sense. So like Facebook Live would be the window through which you display whatever it is you're doing, and therefore, people wouldn't really have to go out of their way to download some software or whatever to join your meeting. You could have a camera feed which points to a live presenter at whatever live meeting you're hosting. And hopefully you can get some interactivity out of that. Honestly, like,
whenever I try to kind of build a lot of different solutions into what I do, my computer physically can't handle it. And I start to look like I don't know, like a news broadcaster with like 3 different screens, like pulling things on like crazy. I feel like I've said a lot of things. Where I'm trying to steer this conversation is, does anyone have experience with like software which seems to be easy for people to actually use, like on the public end, but also lets you do good interactive things like live polling? Because I haven't found that yet, no matter what I've tried.
Yeah, I don't know.
Could I just say this?
Yeah.
I would love to, because we're going to probably end pretty soon, but I just want you all to know, like, this is a big conversation. This is what I'm planning to build, a business on right now. So, yeah, I would love to talk with you all about this. Hearing that there's a huge unmet need. I'm also wrapping up my MBA. That's why I moved on. So I'd love to help, solve these kinds of things, and I don't know what the answers are yet. I have some ideas.
Okay, cool. I think we have only 5 minutes left, so and we really have only Aubrey and Cody here. So would you like to comment on some of the other things, Cody, around oh, and we have Nadia too. Why is this switching back and forth this way? Would you like to comment on some of the other things that came up around, how to make sure that the public input is not just kind of checking a box somewhere, but is, actually a meaningful public input. So, I mean, we can talk about how to get that public input in virtual or physical form, but I think one of the big questions, at least from my side, is, once you've got that public input, how do you show people that their voices are actually being heard? It's not just checking a box. So any thoughts on that from Cody, or following up from either Aubrey or Nadia?
So real quick, Nadia, you asked me for the link. Danny, the WTS room on Slack is where we want to post things because it'll save it there. Okay, yeah, Nadia, I'll share a couple. I have the one I'm thinking of that I've been talking about is in Buffalo, and then there's another one in North Carolina. I can share both of those. And yeah, Cody, before you joined our session, I was mentioning, for public transit agencies who are having outreach events, it's really more effective if those are held physically in the community where they're being, where they're going to be constructing or changing whatever they're going to be doing. But I agree, it's this weird balance of what's accessible for the most people, and a hybrid is definitely, I think it would be amazing if we could find something effective that, if people don't have technology, if they don't have a laptop, they don't have Wi-Fi, but they want to be involved, they want to hear what's going on, they can actually physically show up to a meeting and see, print it out, foam core on an easel, see what's happening, but also, maybe you don't live in the area, maybe you just, for whatever reason, can't physically travel there, or, a million other reasons. You can tune in but still have the same level of interaction. I think the joys of COVID have definitely pushed us to try and develop that solution faster than we ever would have before, which if we're ever going to find some positive things coming out of this, I think that'll be one of them. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how that develops.
I got a few things, and I'm sorry, I really want to share these. So number one, there's a buzzword I'd suggest you all look into called serious gains. So the question about trade-offs, I think gamifying that experience so that people are, and also we won an AFTA award for this. We were doing a sales tax measure, and we built a website that kind of did the a budget tool kind of thing. That's a serious game. We're talking $6 billion, and your tax money, how do you want it spent? And it's the goal was to make people think that they are giving input, which yes they were, but more importantly we were educating them on the realities of the situation. And so you can, and this is the problem with these is that they become very expensive because each situation is so unique. So I've considered whether there's a way to build a framework where the things that are the trade-offs and the numbers that are happening behind the scenes are kind of modular and interchangeable. Are we talking roadway physical space? Are we talking money? Talking people? I don't know. But like trying to solve that is something I'm interested in. The other, Nadia, your question of like, I don't have all the answers, but honestly, I kind of do. I know people that do this work, and I'm talking with them about how to. My goal is to make this affordable. So what I want to do is going to work for I'm not talking about SEPTA. SEPTA will figure it out. I'm talking about the small and mid-sized businesses, the tribal agencies. I mean, everyone around there's a greater need there. And so that, how do we drive that cost down? Do we ship you some, package and train you virtually on how to set it all up? I don't know. But it's about complex stuff on the back end that gives people options on the front end and makes it easy for them on the front end. So it's all of the above channels, right? So they can watch it on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, whatever. That can all be done. That's just an encode. There's technology that does that already. We can stream it to the public access TV channel at the same time, too. That's all easy once you know how to use that technology. Is technology elitist? I actually think it's the opposite. I think that by going from in-person, and this is at least in my community, the people that go to in-person meetings I think are the elites. I think are the powerful who've been controlling how our society is built and how our cities are built for a long, long time, and they're still doing it, and they're the only ones that are being heard. But by opening it up to people who can't go to that place at that time because they work, service worker jobs, right? Like we're doing these at like 6 o'clock, which is when a lot of people are working. They're going to be working till 9 p.m. because they serve us all. Right, so it's the opposite, I think, of what the dialogue has been, in my opinion.
Okay, so we have 1 minute left. So is that right, Danny?
Yes, that is correct. And as Aubrey highlighted before, we do have a specific Slack channel for this, so we can always have conversations after this ends on that Slack channel, and providing also resources. So if there's any resources that you mentioned you want to share, link to it or anything, definitely put it in there so that we have a more permanent thing, since this will change to a different session soon.
Okay, cool. So, lots of food for thought here. And I guess we can continue the conversation on the Slack channel as and when people are interested. Thank you all for attending. Bye.
Great topic. Thanks for setting it up. Good ideas, everyone.